What if I told you there was a king so scandalous, so controversial, that his own people called him the desired one when he was exiled, but then the traitor king when he returned? Today, we're diving into the shocking true story of one of history's most perverted and despised monarchs. And trust me, this story has more plot twists than a Netflix series. But first, hit that subscribe button because we're about to uncover royal secrets they don't teach in history class. I'm talking about Ferdinand VII of Spain, a man who betrayed his own father, collaborated with foreign invaders, and whose personal life was so scandalous it would make modern tabloids blush. By the end of this video, you'll understand why he's considered one of the most hated rulers in Spanish history. Our story begins in 1784 when Ferdinand was born into the Spanish royal family during one of the most turbulent periods in European history. His father, Charles IV, was, let's just say he wasn't exactly the sharpest sword in the royal armory. But Ferdinand was something else entirely. From a young age, he showed signs of the manipulative and cruel nature that would define his reign. Here's where it gets interesting and, honestly, a bit disturbing. Ferdinand wasn't content to wait for his father to die naturally. No, this prince had bigger plans. In 1808, Spain was a nation on the brink. The royal palace was thick with suspicion and betrayal. Ferdinand, the crown prince, did something almost unthinkable. He conspired against his own father, King Charles IV. This wasn't just a family squabble, it was a high-stakes game of power with the fate of an entire country hanging in the balance. Ferdinand's ambition was clear, but his methods were shocking, even to those used to palace intrigue. He reached out to Napoleon, the most powerful man in Europe, hoping to use the French emperor's influence to secure his own place on the throne. But here's the kicker. When Napoleon's armies invaded Spain, Ferdinand didn't rally his people or organize resistance. He didn't even try to defend his father's crown, or his own. Instead, he watched as French troops marched through Spanish cities, the royal guard standing aside, and the people of Spain left to face the invaders alone. The Spanish people were stunned, betrayed by the very man who was supposed to lead them. In a move that would shock the world, Ferdinand literally handed over his crown to Napoleon. He surrendered not just his own power, but the sovereignty of Spain itself. Imagine the weight of that moment, a king, kneeling before a foreign emperor, giving up everything his ancestors had fought to protect. Think about that for a moment. The throne of Spain, empty. The people, leaderless. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. Across the country, shock turned to anger and anger to despair. How could their king abandon them so easily? A king's duty is to protect his people, to stand with them in their darkest hour. But Ferdinand just gave up. He turned his back on his subjects, leaving them to face the chaos and violence of war. But as unbelievable as that sounds, it actually gets worse. While his people were fighting and dying in the streets, resisting the brutal French occupation in what we now call the Peninsular War, Ferdinand was living in comfort. He became Napoleon's guest in France, enjoying the luxuries of a foreign palace while his homeland burned. He dined with the very man who had invaded his country, seemingly unconcerned with the suffering of his people. Back in Spain, the people clung to hope. They called Ferdinand el Deseado, the desired one, believing he was a prisoner, a victim of Napoleon's schemes. They imagined him longing to return, to save them from foreign rule. His image became a symbol of resistance, even as the truth was far more complicated. What they didn't know was that Ferdinand was not just a captive. He was collaborating with their enemies. In secret meetings and private letters, he negotiated with the French, putting his own interests above those of his country. The Spanish people, fighting for their freedom, had no idea that the man they called their savior was, in fact, siding with the enemy. When Napoleon fell in 1814, Ferdinand VII returned to Spain, stepping back onto his homeland as a symbol of hope for a nation battered by years of war and foreign occupation. The Spanish people, exhausted by the chaos of the Napoleonic era, saw in Ferdinand the promise of stability and the restoration of their beloved monarchy. For a brief, shining moment, he was hailed as a hero, the savior who would heal the wounds of a fractured country. The people celebrated his return with wild enthusiasm. Bells rang, confetti filled the air, and crowds surged through the streets, desperate to catch a glimpse of their king. But the euphoria was short-lived. The joy, as it turned out, lasted for about 5 minutes. Almost immediately, Ferdinand revealed his true intentions. He wasted no time in dismantling every liberal reform that had been painstakingly put in place during his absence. The Constitution, the freedoms, the hopes for a more just society, all were swept away in a matter of weeks. He brought back the dreaded Inquisition, a symbol of Spain's darkest days, and reintroduced torture as a tool of state power. Ferdinand's Spain became a place of fear and suspicion. He created a police state so suffocating, so obsessed with rooting out dissent, that even the most loyal subjects began to whisper in fear. Secret police lurked in every shadow, and neighbors turned on neighbors, terrified of being accused of disloyalty. It was a regime that would have made even Orwell weep. But if his public life was a nightmare for Spain, his private life was a twisted drama, all its own. Behind the gilded doors of the royal palace, Ferdinand's personal affairs were the stuff of scandal and whispered legend. Over the course of his life, Ferdinand had 4 wives, each marriage more controversial than the last. His relationships were marked by jealousy, manipulation, and a hunger for control that mirrored his rule over Spain. The stories of what happened behind those palace doors are the stuff of nightmares. Whispers of betrayal, secret plots, and emotional torment swirled through the corridors. The royal household was a hotbed of intrigue, where trust was a rare commodity, and everyone had something to hide. Power games and manipulation were the order of the day. Ferdinand's wives were often pawns in his political schemes, forced to navigate a world where affection was a weapon and loyalty could be fatal. The king's paranoia and cruelty left scars that would last for generations. The behavior inside the palace was so outrageous, so shocking, that even the jaded aristocrats of the time were left speechless. Scandal after scandal rocked the court, and rumors of Ferdinand's excesses spread across Europe. His treatment of his wives was so notorious, so cruel and humiliating that even other European royalty, no strangers to scandal themselves, were openly disgusted. They whispered about him in their own courts, appalled by the depths to which the Spanish king had sunk. And remember, these were people who thought public executions were family entertainment. For Ferdinand VII to shock even them, you know his story is one of the darkest chapters in royal history. Ferdinand's reign wasn't just personally twisted, it was politically devastating. He persecuted anyone who had supported the liberal constitution. We're talking mass executions, exile, and torture. He destroyed Spain's educational system, censored the press, and basically turned the clock back 200 years. While the rest of Europe was modernizing, Spain under Ferdinand was becoming a backward police state. And here's the most infuriating part. He lost almost all of Spain's American colonies during his reign. His incompetence and brutality directly led to the independence of most of Latin America. Imagine losing an entire continent because you're too busy being a tyrant to govern properly. Ferdinand VII died in 1833, and his death sparked a civil war that would plague Spain for years. Even in death, he managed to cause chaos. But here's what's really crazy. This man's actions didn't just affect Spain. His loss of the American colonies reshaped the entire Western Hemisphere. His collaboration with Napoleon changed European politics. His domestic tyranny influenced Spanish culture for generations. Modern historians consider him one of the worst monarchs in European history. And that's saying something when you're competing with people like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. So there you have it, the story of Ferdinand VII, a king whose reign left such a bitter taste in the mouths of his people that his very name became synonymous with disappointment and betrayal. His rule was so disastrous, so deeply resented, that when foreign invaders marched into Spain, the people actually celebrated their arrival, seeing them as a lesser evil compared to their own monarch. Imagine that, a nation so desperate for relief that they cheered for conquerors, all because of the misery inflicted by their own king. It's a rare and sobering moment in history when a country welcomes outsiders with open arms, simply to escape the grip of their own ruler. Ferdinand's legacy is a powerful reminder of how leadership can shape the fate of an entire nation, for better or, in this case, for much, much worse. They say sometimes the cure can be worse than the disease, and Ferdinand proved that in spectacular fashion. His return to power, after years of turmoil, only deepened Spain's wounds. Instead of healing the country, he brought more suffering, more division, and more chaos. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of wise, compassionate leadership. But now I want to hear from you. Was Ferdinand VII truly the worst king in history? Or do you think there's another monarch out there who deserves that infamous title even more? Maybe you have a contender in mind, someone whose actions were even more disastrous or whose legacy was even more destructive. History is full of controversial rulers, and the debate over who was the worst is far from settled. Share your thoughts, your arguments, and your own picks for history's most notorious monarchs. Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your insights and seeing which historical figures you think deserve a spot on the worst of all time list. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the darker corners of royal history, don't forget to stick around. There's so much more to uncover, stories of intrigue, betrayal, and the unexpected twists that shape the world we live in today. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us keep bringing these fascinating, sometimes shocking stories from the past to life. We've got plenty more incredible tales coming your way, from royal scandals and epic battles to the unsung heroes and villains who changed history forever. There's always something new to discover, and I can't wait to share it all with you. Until next time, remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction, especially when it comes to the lives of kings and queens. The stories we uncover together remind us that history is full of surprises, and sometimes the most unbelievable tales are the ones that actually happened. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history's most astonishing stories.